Scott, welcome to Amplifying Recruitment.
Thanks for having me, Jamie.
Could you do like a 60-second introduction to you?
Yeah, so I'm Scott Ellam, CEO and founder of XCE, Connecting Excellence Group PLC. So we are a listed executive recruitment group. Flagship operating company is a company called Spencer Riley. So that's an international executive recruitment firm, permanent placements across a number of different industries. That was established in 2014. So I'm probably your stereotypical, started out as a recruitment consultant upon leaving university, went forward, set up my own private business, and then we recently I took it public.
Before we go into the XCE piece, we just go back a little bit. So launching Spencer Riley, just been having another conversation with someone else about what it takes to be able to launch a business, why people do it, why some people don't do it. What was the motivation for you? What happened for you to go, yeah, I'm good enough at this to be able to go and do something for myself? How did that come about?
Came about really early in my career, and the seeds probably planted in growing up. I was quite, doesn't sound good to say, obsessed with money and business, but really interested in money and business. And as I was growing up, I always thought, well, I want to go into an industry that will allow me the opportunity to set up my own business. I came from that kind of, if you call it working class. My dad's he's a pretty high level engineer in his firm. My mum had her own small business in the local town, like hairdressers. And I thought, okay, one side of my family, my dad's in quite a safe career, that's a long-term career with big company. My mum's more entrepreneurial. And I always thought, I'm going to set up my own business at some point and run my own business. So as I'm growing up and as I'm making decisions going through university and coming out of the university, it was always in the back of my mind, it needs to be an industry that I go into that has a low barrier to setting up your own company. And I met a number of people who ran executive recruitment companies. There's a massive hub of recruitment companies in Leeds. And I used to work in the popular bars in Leeds. So I met a lot of owners and I thought that's the industry for me. And then coming out of the university, I went into the industry and quite quickly had a couple of events happen through that period that gave me just the opportunity to set up by myself and take us to where we are today. And I should probably mention as we go through that, as we go through that journey, the setup we've got today is probably very different to a lot of the recruitment firms. And that does go back again to the sort of focus on money and understanding that when you've got money in your bank account, it's going down in value over the long term and that you need to be using that to purchase assets. And I think that resonates probably with a lot of recruitment consultants. And our strategy and the reason we've gone public is because we have quite an innovative balance sheet strategy about operating business. So if you think of it now, the operating business is an executive recruitment company. The balance sheet is actually what some people might call a digital asset treasury, but we effectively hold all our long-term reserves in Bitcoin, and we have a capital markets team to work on that side of the business. So I suppose the combination of that growing up and coming into running a business early is probably where I've gone on that journey and ended up where we are today.
And we'll dive into that in detail because I think that's something for me I think is truly unique. I suppose I'm interested, just going back a step of what you said there, of yours was an intentional move into recruitment. And there's so many people who have on this podcast, people speak to you, go, I fell into recruitment. It just kind of happened. And then they find out they were good at it and then thought I could probably do this myself. That doesn't sound like that was the case. It was very much seeing these guys in the bars. They seem to be doing well. I want a piece of that and then it's very planned that I can create something of my own in that industry.
Yeah,
unique.
I went to Leeds University, or not Leeds University, Leeds Met at the time, Leeds Beckett now, for three things really. To study business management, to play rugby league, and to network effectively. Now, the balance of...
Those are three different things to what lots of people go to at university.
The balance of the networking, at the time of the networking, the rugby and the business at the time was probably not exactly as you like to explain. But I didn't know what I wanted from my long-term career at that stage. I just knew that it was the opportunity to earn as good as I was at the job. And towards the end of university, I remember I had a graduate offer that was like, here's a big basic salary, a company car, or big compared with what you'd expect coming out of uni, a company car. This is the role. And I remember looking at it and just thinking, well, I'm going to have that basic salary and then that's going to go up a little bit. And then it's going to go up a little bit. And it's going to go up a little bit if I stay with that business or move to another. And there's no opportunity to have any excitement from that. Whereas what I've known in executive recruitment, like my two options were, do you want to take 13 grand basic salary, but you can earn a lot more money on top if you're good? Or do you want to go into a graduate scheme? It's like, I won't be excited. I want to know how good or bad I am at that industry. So I went into it thinking, I'll give absolutely everything I've got for 12 months solid. And by the end of that 12 months, I'll know whether this is the industry for me or not. And I'll still be young enough stage to be able to go and do something else and trying to say, I had a gap year after university. Can I look at that grad scheme again?
Yeah. Let's fast forward a little bit. You start your recruitment career, you get to the point where you launch Spencer Riley, you go off, you do your own thing. Like, what was that growth path like? It's all in 12 years now, right? But in terms of like maybe those first 10 years, what did that look like? How did you get the business to where it is today?
Yeah, well, I started Spencer Riley in 2014, so I'd have been about 24 years old, circa 24 years old. So I'd come into recruitment, and the first 3 months you're learning, next 3 months I got the job pretty quickly, and I understood that it was like, the more detail you're taking, the more interest you're showing in a client's business, the more you're actually going to be able to understand it and provide a good service for it. Same with candidates. And in that second 6 months, I think it was, but maybe someone in the office might say, no, you didn't quite, but I think I was a highest performing consultant within quite a established business in that second 6 month period after starting. And I had to get to a point where I set up my own business, there was a few things where it's like, you make your own look kind of being in the right room. But I had a client who I'd cold called, placed with a number of times over 3 months, and he's in a very different industry to what I'd been focusing on myself. And I'd had a lot of success with him. And I remember he called me and said, look, there's this company's gone into liquidation today. We want to get hold of the owner of the business now. Everybody in my business has been trying to get me their mobile number. We can't get the mobile number. I can rescue the business and provide the service for the clients of this business, which will mean that I can keep those clients into the long term. And the owner of his business is he's got creditors, his phone's off, or it's probably in a lake. And I was like, yeah, I'll do that. And I remember I shot back from a sandwich bar in Leeds, and I'm like, straight to my desk, I'm like, right, who is this guy? And this is back in 2014, so it wasn't like, couldn't AI it. Found out he had a villa in Portugal. He rang up to book the villa, said I wanted it for 12 months. So I need to speak to the owner, And they put me on to this guy's wife, and I convinced her. I was like, look, this is not the call you're expecting. I'm not interested in the villa. I'm an executive recruiter, but I've got a client who wants to purchase Dave, let's call him, company today. And I know he's not answering the phone. I know he's probably got a lot of issues going on and a lot of people chasing him today, but can you get him on the phone with me now? And she did. And then I got my client on the phone and he bought his business. And that was like a moment where just did that. He only took an hour or two. And he said, thanks for that. We've done it. Do you want to come to Spain, meet my wife, family, and spend a few days at the weekend over here? Well, there's a thanks for doing it. So flew over and we dropped off like a Jag convertible. There's your keys, Mr. Ellam. And I'm thinking, I'm 24 years old. I'm probably not insured on this Jag. Shot down to the hotel. He booked me and he's like, my villa's up here. We'll come down to the port and take you out on the yacht. And I get to a yacht, and the yacht's called Loose Change. Like, I like this guy. And at the end of that weekend, he offered me a role, and the role was like mergers, acquisitions, headhunting. But you get a really fancy company car. You get used to the apartment that he's got near where his head office was. And here's your company plane. And he was like, if you take the role, I'll send you to Spain to do pilot's license. So I was like 24. I was like, it sounds like a pretty good deal, this. So I did it. And I learned a lot fast with the sort of approaching companies, exact same as a headhunter would or an exec recruiter to buy the companies. So I learned a lot in a really fast space of time. And then when we bought a company or bought a couple of companies, the pace had gone out of it, as in like, don't do anything now, just do the recruitment for this group. And I was pretty bored. And I made a call to a candidate, a client, on a Tuesday evening, and then on a Wednesday morning, they accepted the role. I was like, right, now I've got to start a company fast. So I spoke to the guy who was my boss at the time, who'd given me all these sort of opportunities, told him what I'd done the night before while I was kind of, what should I do? And said, I'll just send you half the revenue that comes in from this, and then I'll send you it for the others, and I'll be here to work full time for you when you need me. But right now I've just got capacity to build my own business as well. And he supported me with that, allowed me to do that. And then sort of 6 months down the line, became a client, and I just went off and started my own business. And that's how I managed to do it at an earlier age. It was just the network and the sort of ability to land in a lucky spot. And quite quickly after that, I had another client who wanted a discount of a 15 grand fee. And naively at 24, I said, you don't have to pay anything as long as you give me an office for free. And he did. That's probably the most expensive office space I've rented since I started. But it got me started and allowed me to start building the business.
It's interesting you say luck there, because I think there's something in like the bullishness and the finding a way to make this work. I don't think there's many recruiters or people, in fact, take the recruitment bit out of it, that would have gone, right, let me hunt this guy down, find out where he, like the villa piece, and then phoning the wife and pretending that you wanted to rent it for 12 months. Like it's, there's something in the psyche there, I think.
Yeah.
The mindset and approach that's not luck. That's
like, if I want to get something done, I think that's probably my strongest skill set. I will get it done and do whatever is needed to make sure that happens quite often. And sometimes you fall flat on your face and it doesn't happen. But you know you've given absolutely everything you can.
And sometimes it's a plane, so it's a pilot's license.
Yeah. I never actually got to fly his plane. I think that was just, to get me into a business. It's like, can I fly your twin engine thingy across Europe? No. All right. Okay. I'll stick to renting these little Cessnas at the weekend. But yeah, there was a real will to get things done. And it compounds like confidence when you're in your early stage in your career. I pick up phone to anyone and come out with a good result. When you do that, you're far more likely to get a good result the next time you speak to someone, the next time you speak to someone else spoke to. And it's sort of the momentum in this industry is really important. You see that with young consultants, like, most important thing you can do is when it's going well and when the calls are going well for you, it's just keep putting more in.
Yeah.
And sometimes people think, I've got that coming in 3 months down that bonus, and just switch off a little bit. It just takes you back. So yeah, compounding that I think is pretty important.
And so where's the business today? Like Spencer Riley's a business today. Where are you in terms of like headcount and like GP numbers? Like what's the state play?
Yeah, so we came. I shrank the business down 2018 to move to Leeds in 2020, and effectively set the business up to be a scalable platform for growth as a private business, moving into Leeds where there's a hotbed of talent. So I went through that journey from 14 to 20 of growing a business, then saying, right, we're moving to a different city, and if you want to come with us, this is what we're doing. And started in 2020, a week before COVID, and it was like, we'd moved into a new city, COVID hit. So the business where it's at today, we've listed publicly December the 11th, just before Christmas. We've got a capital markets team that looks after a balance sheet side of the business, a Bitcoin treasury strategy, and then we've got the operational executive recruitment strategy. So right now, today, it can change in price here, but I quite often denominate in dollars because that's how the capital markets denominate. Look, we're $7 million PLC. We're holding 52 Bitcoin on the balance sheet worth 2.6 million this minute, or just before we started. It could be up, could be down by the time we finish the interview. We've got a healthy cash balance in the business, and then we have an executive recruitment team of under 10 people in the office. And then we have a capital markets team of me, chairman, non-exec directors, board advisors on that side of the business. And our plans are, as a result of the PLC status, as a result of our balance sheet strategy, and as a result of the platform for growth in the executive recruitment group, is to scale significantly on the operational and the treasury side of the business. And on the operational executive recruitment side is to use the PLC status and the strength of the balance sheet that's got no typical debt on it. It's holding 52 Bitcoin at 2.6 million. It's got cash and a healthy cash balance. It's to scale the executive recruitment firm by using performance-based share options to attract high-billing talent to the business. So we have plans to severely ramp up the hiring throughout this year, next year, and following year, and build a PLC that effectively has a very strong balance sheet with an operational business that follows that and attracts more revenue the stronger the balance sheet is.
Okay.
And that story probably started when I mentioned moving into Leeds. 2020, COVID hit. Week later, that's probably the catalyst that's set us on the journey we've been on in the last 5 years.
Could you explain to me, like I'm a 6-year-old, like how does it work? How does you say there with I think it says the first recruitment business or exec search business built on Bitcoin. So how does it actually work if I'm completely ignorant to the world of crypto?
Yeah, well, I'd start by saying we're Bitcoin only. And I'll explain the differences, as I would see it, between your pounds and dollars, stable coins, which are the same as pounds and dollars, but just nobody controls the wallet. You don't need to leave them in a bank. You can keep them behind a password that you protect. Bitcoin, which for me is sound money and the most ethical money on the planet. And then crypto, which you could invent, Jamie. I could invent a new one. And you tend to find venture capital firms invent them. People in the bedrooms invent them, and now presidents invent them and try and sell them somewhere else to watch the price go up and sell the price. Bitcoin's the opposite of that, the antithesis of that. So to explain it to you in simple terms, I've got to talk about money. So 2016, I started studying money. Let's just say money rather than I actually got introduced to Bitcoin. And the 3 points that stood out to me were A, nobody has set this up. Nobody controls it. There is no issuer. So it's got an ethical launch, if you like. Somebody put the technology out there, zero value. It took a long time for it to be priced at 1 cent. So nobody's controlling it. It's limited to 21 million coins forever. There's nothing anyone can do to increase that number. So that's the first time in human history that we've ever had a mathematically scarce asset. Gold, you don't know how much is underground. You don't know how much is on an asteroid. Property and land, you don't know how much land is on the planet. Dubai just built some more into the sea. So it's first time of mathematically scarce asset. It's unconfiscatable. It's the first time in human history there's something that I can't steal off you and you can't steal off me if you own it. So if you've got the password of 12 words in your head and you own 10 Bitcoin, I say give them to me and you say no, and let's go extreme, I shoot you, that's gone forever. The password's in your head, it's done. So it's the first time that, but if you had a lot of gold in your safe, I could probably convince you to give me it.
Yeah.
So the fact that it's unconfiscatable is far more important than people realise when they look at this asset class. And then the fact you can transfer it anywhere in the world. If you're in a war-torn country and you own your house and you own a business there and you've got money in the bank and all of a sudden your bank stops, which has just happened in the last few weeks. In Iran, for example, there'll be people there who've lost everything because they held their money in the Iranian rial. And it's now 2,000% more expensive to buy Bitcoin if you're using Iranian rial a few weeks later. But if you held your money in Bitcoin, because you can transport it anywhere or just take it in your pocket or a USB or in your head across a border, it means you can leave a country like the Ukraine or Iran should you need to with your family and take all of your wealth with you. And that doesn't mean you need to believe in the price of Bitcoin going up forever. You could do that in one day and then switch it back into the local currency if you wanted. So there's all them use cases at the start in 2016 that I'm looking at. But ultimately, If you look back at the history of money, and I'll just go recent history, you have 1944, after the Second World War, Bretton Woods. And that was an agreement globally, led by the US, to say $35 is the price of 1 ounce of gold. So we can't create more dollars without buying more gold first. So the money is backed by gold. And all the other currencies around the world are backing theirs back. They're pegging it to the dollar. So $35 is 1 ounce of gold. And that lasted from 1944 to 1971. And life was great between 1944 and 1971. Tended to be one person in a family household worked. Everybody had 2 cars. Everybody had a nice house. Things were getting cheaper for them over time. Holidays were great. And life looks really pleasant in that period of history. We get to 1971. And anybody who's watching can Google these 2 events, because they are interesting. I believe 1971 is the most pivotal moment in our history over the last 100 years. We had the Nixon shock, where the Vietnam War had been going on and the US government needed to print more money. And they were not printing money in line with the gold that they held, allegedly. And a few countries had said, well, we've got lots of gold saved at Fort Knox, we want it back. And the US kind of said, well, we can't, if we didn't want to say we can't give it back. But what the president did, Nixon, in 1971, was temporarily remove the link between the US dollar and gold. I.e., you can't give us US dollars and get gold back anymore. You used to always be able to do that. And when you remove that in 1971, it never came back. Whenever a government does something temporarily, it tends not to be temporary in history. And you've probably seen that since 2020. But when they removed the gold standard in 71, it meant that wages stayed pretty much the same or went up a little bit. House prices had just shot up from 1971. The stock market shoots up. Everything goes up in price that's an asset that people want to hold for a long period of time. And now you're seeing everything going up in price. Food, insurance, gas, electric, cars. Everything's just exponentially increasing in costs. The only reason it's increasing costs is because we're increasing the money supply. And in 2020, the reason I adopted a Bitcoin standard for the business was I'd been studying Bitcoin for 4 years and personally, basing my own personal balance sheet on that's the asset I'll hold for the next 10, 20, 30 years, because there's going to be a demand for a neutral currency that's limited in supply, unconfiscatable, transferable anywhere in the world, and verifiable. So when you look at the Bitcoin blockchain, it shows every wallet, every transaction that's ever happened, but you don't know who any of them are. It's like a Swiss bank account, but it's publicly available. So 2020 came and I'm running the business and I've been building up a cash reserve for years in the executive recruitment company. And I think all executive recruitment companies look at the business and they're like, we've got a service-based business that's generating profit and cash. You've got people in there working hard who are generating the revenue and earning commissions and bonuses and looking to better their lives over the long term. There's a business owner, you sat there going, well, my cash, if you've got 100 grand in the account, or if you've got £1 million in the account, £1 million, if you leave it in a savings account, even if you're getting 2% or 3% a year, it's going down in purchasing power because everything else is going up 10% a year. So you can do everything right, or as you're told is correct, and still get punished because the government's inability to manage money, manage debt, and the fact that every time there's a crisis, they print more money for free, hand it out to whoever they want to hand it out to, which causes everybody who's already holding the currency to own less of a percentage of the money in existence and become effectively poorer. So all the businesses that are doing the right thing and saving cash gradually becoming poorer over time. So in 2020 hit and they basically said, we're going to print money, give it to people to stay at home and not be productive. And we're going to print money and give it to businesses. I was like, well, I've been studying this for a while. I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to switch my balance sheet now. This is the moment to do it into Bitcoin. And I thought it was a great idea that week. And we probably bought Bitcoin, probably bought another Bitcoin. And the price went 51,000, 61,000. And then it drew all the way down to 16,000 over that 5-year period. And I was buying every single day and every single week throughout that entire period. Because I'd had the ups and downs previously and I had a high level of conviction. We bought from 61,000 all the way down to 16,000 all the way across. And when it got back to about 33, we were up 20% in comparison to what would have been on gold and the S&P. And certainly more than if we'd held in cash. And then when we got to the IPO in December, we had an average purchase price of 37,500. And we had 120% return on the Bitcoin that we held. And we held just under 10 Bitcoin just before we IPO'd. So I just saw that as that's the long-term treasury asset of choice for our business. I think other businesses could replicate that. But if they did and they wanted to consider it, I would always say study it significantly for as much as you possibly can and allocate accordingly to your conviction. So do not go, I'm going to do what Scott's done and switch my balance sheet into Bitcoin, because the chances are the day after it's going to drop by 5%. And you're going to be in a difficult situation and worry.
But that doesn't bother you, does it? So it
doesn't bother me, no. But it would if I convinced you to do it, Jamie. And then you'd be ringing me up tomorrow saying it's volatile. I'd say, I know it's volatile. You just got to buy consistently over a long period of time.
How do you decide how much? Like, say you bring in X amount of cash every month in terms of like fees and revenue and all that kind of. Like, how do you decide what goes into buying more Bitcoin? What goes into, I don't know, traditional growth of like increasing headcount or marketing spend or tech or whatever that might be? How do you, what's the split?
It depends. The split would depend on the market environment of both sides of business. So market environment in Bitcoin, market environment in recruitment. But just to give you an idea on that, the business model of having this strong balance sheet with no debt and backed by an asset like Bitcoin that the market believes Bitcoin. So Strategy, who owns 700,000 Bitcoin, whose event I was at in Vegas last week with Citibank there, Morgan Stanley there, TD were there, Barclays, a great conversation with two guys from Barclays who are doing $100 million deals based on Bitcoin in the US. But when you explain how the UK basically bank works, they're like, they are pretty far behind was a polite way of putting it. But how do you decide how you allocate the cash within the business? Well, we raised 3.3 million at IPO in December and we put 2.7 million into Bitcoin. And then we launched a XC Bitcoin bond, which will probably be like, what do you want about? Like, I've not been releasing bonds my entire life, but the capital markets team designed bonds and we put the bonds out. But just to explain to you why we're so heavily invested on the balance sheet in Bitcoin. So the two problems in executive recruitment for me that we solve and this strategy solves and people can copy. For executive recruiters, you're on a modest basic and you're on high commission quite often, but you're not saving anything for the long term. And if you look at back from when I started my career, I used to be able to earn a significant bonus and then buy a nice car or buy a house or go to holiday. And right now, because of inflation, people are earning significant bonuses and then getting hit with significant taxes, are struggling to benefit from what they should be benefiting from, which is a much better lifestyle. But there's a difficulty in that, like, where's the long-term hope? If you know that the money that you're saving this month's going to be worth less next year, you spend it right now on anything you can spend it on.
Yeah.
So for executive recruitment consultants and the talent attraction vehicle that we're building, PLC status, you can see the shares, see the price of the shares, and you know that when you join our business, you will be given performance-based share options in the group. So based on the revenue that you're generating, you'll be able to earn share options on top of your normal basic salary, normal executive recruitment style commission scheme with an added bonus of performance-based share options. And you can earn them year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, year 5, year 6, year 10, and build up a bank of share options in a public listed company. And at the moment, today, our shares, 50% of the value of them is equal to 50% of the value of the Bitcoin that we hold. And the Bitcoin, so do you understand what I mean? We're valued at 2 times the amount of Bitcoin that we hold. Yeah. So you know if you've got 100 grand worth of shares in our business, the 50 grand of that is Bitcoin exposure there right out. And the other 50 grand is operational. So when you join the business, you join in a team where the more revenue you drive into a business, the more profit you drive into a business, the more that should be reflected in the share price growth because the revenue and the profit's going up. And on the Bitcoin treasury side of a company, we've got a capital markets team that's got a chairman who is the first person to allocate Bitcoin to a pension fund in the UK, who deals with institutional investors in the UK on a significant basis. We've got a board advisor in Richard Byworth, who launched the largest hedge fund in Switzerland in the last 10 years. And that hedge fund was holding 5,000 Bitcoin. He's probably one of the most world famous Bitcoin strategists in capital markets. And we've got Vijay Selvan, who is the previously head of governance at Goldman Sachs and reports into the two famous twins who invented one of the largest social media sites. We've got a NASDAQ listed digital asset exchange. And then we have a CFO who's experienced in main market listings. So that would come in useful if we built a balance sheet that was of a certain size and we had a revenue of a certain size that allowed us to move on to a London stock exchange or something similar to that, or a dual listing in the USA on a NASDAQ or something. At the moment, we're on Aquis in the UK, a growth market. So you can still access the shares on Hardy as long as that AJ Bell and Trans Investor and all that. But it's easier to speak to the big institutions in the UK when they're on the main market. And we also have, I suppose, if I just summarize that team's purpose, it's to increase the Bitcoin that's held on the balance sheet and increase the Bitcoin per share measure. So at the moment, it would measure how much Bitcoin equals a share in a business. It's to increase that number. And that means me flying over to the US to meet US investors and US partners and US clients has two purposes. One, can generate recruitment revenue for the business and bring back assignments. And two, can generate interest from investors. And then we can raise money through the markets and buy more Bitcoin. And then the other aspect is we can do financial products like the Bitcoin bonds. So we released the world's first Bitcoin denominated bond. Now the government released bonds. My opinion, they're not an appealing investment for me.
Yeah.
But our bonds appeal to institutions who really understand Bitcoin, got exposure to Bitcoin, because they basically track the Bitcoin price over a year. And when our share price outperforms Bitcoin by 20%, convert into shares. So they're good for shareholders, good for investors, good for them. But basically, the problem that we're trying to solve there is PLC status, active Bitcoin treasury, executive recruitment firm, bring in executive recruiters who want a long-term career in this industry, but want to make sure that as they're performing and they're putting their energy into the role and they're earning the basics and the commissions that they earn, that on top of that, they're earning share options that can provide a better future for them and hope into the next 5, 10, 15 years of their career. And the other problem is owners of businesses. I've been the owner of a private recruitment company and nobody ever approached me to buy the business. I wasn't looking for anyone to buy the business. I set the business up thinking this will be a forever business, but it's hard to know how you're going to do that. And I believe this is how we're going to do it. But I think you'll know the stats better than me on this, Jamie. There's about 30,000 recruitment companies in the UK. There's certainly about 40 in our city operating in an international executive recruitment model that are privately owned. And the owners of those businesses tend to look at either management buyout from one of the staff, employee ownership trust, which the government's just rumpled for tax advantages to. I have no idea why, other than they don't want to necessarily see people handing the businesses to the staff and that kind of incentive. But competitors rarely buy competitors because the value in the businesses, the assets of the businesses, are the people in the businesses generating the revenue who've got relationships. And private equity rarely come into the space for permanent placement exec recruitment. And if they do, we risk losing the best staff to competitors. So for business owners who are thinking, well, I'm 5, 10, 15 years out from retirement, but what does retirement look like? We're able to offer a vehicle that's a PLC status company that's holding a fast growing, and I believe will be it's been the fastest growing asset for the last 10 years by a significant margin. I believe it'll be the same over the next 10 years. And speaking to those institutions, they're building products around it that take time for banks to put in place. But building a place where business owners can come and say, here's my business, cash flowing profitable business, we've got cash in reserves, we're open to joining the group, and be able to give them long-term earnouts with share options, keep the brand that they love that they've built, keep the ethos that they've loved that they've built, keep the team that they've built, but just give them a platform where they can then have access to the capital markets, grow the business further and become part of a wider group that's backed by Bitcoin treasury and PLC status. Whether these consultants, exec recruitment consultants or business owners really understand Bitcoin yet or not, I believe that's an appealing opportunity over the long term for them.
What's the risk for those people? Is there, like, obviously you talk about, it seems like there's a hell of a lot of upsides there for the recruiter joining and the long-term wealth creation and wealth security, I suppose. Same with someone that's like a business owner. Is there some risk stuff that you should be aware of?
There's always risks in business. And I suppose when you think to executive recruitment consultants or executive recruitment owners, you tend to have people who, especially the owners, who've been out there and are comfortable with risk. I have to say, from a point of view of conviction in Bitcoin, I'd love to hear if you have any risks in mind, because I speak to people who are at the same stage as me, hedge fund managers who are focused on this space, institutional allocators who are focused on this space, and then I speak to a lot of family friends outside of this space who have reservations about Bitcoin as an asset class. So if you've got any specific risks on there, because effectively what I'm saying is, ever since Bitcoin started, if you do a 200-week moving average, which is based on the price over 4 years as an average, not today's price or an hour's price, it's always gone up. So the chart, if you zoom in on it, usually looks like that.
Yeah.
But if you look at the average, it looks like that. So we know what the base level would be. But I can't see any situation where you've got the US government setting up a strategic Bitcoin reserve and the US Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent saying that we are going to budget neutral use the reserves to accumulate as much Bitcoin as we can. We see the US government as the Bitcoin and digital asset capital of the world. You've got the main banks around the world talking about custody in the asset, and you've got the Clarity Act going through the US government right now to sign off that it can become embedded in the financial system. And you've got companies, we're not the only company with a Bitcoin treasury, you've got companies adopting that strategy as well. So over the next 5-10 years, when you zoom out, I have absolute confidence that Bitcoin will always be worth more in the future than it's ever been worth in the past. The risk for people coming in and working in the business is that doesn't mean it's not going to be up, down, sideways, painful at times.
It's got to be a long-term view.
You've got to be a long-term view, and that can be really hard for people to manage emotionally. Which is why I said if someone was thinking about looking at small man, learn as you go, minimum 4-year time frame, ideally 10-year time frame, but best time frame I would say is forever, because it will just become a collateral. Like if you own this building that we're sat in right now, you wouldn't be like, point back is divisible as well. If you own this building, you wouldn't need some money next week and be like, I'm going to sell a little bit of the building.
Yeah.
Can't do it. And you wouldn't even think, I'm going to sell the building. You'd borrow against the building. And in the future, I mean, right now you can do that with Bitcoin, but the services will become better and better the more banks are holding it and more they're familiar with it in 10, 20, 30 years. I don't think people who hold Bitcoin will need to ever sell it to fund their lifestyle. They'll just borrow against it in the exact same way people who own significant property portfolios do or have done.
I could talk about this all day because I'm completely ignorant to so much of what you're talking about, and I'm really intrigued by it. I think there's a big thing about like money education.
Yeah.
And it's, I've got an 18-year-old daughter, and at the moment, like I've just bought this amazing book called Girls Just Want to Have Funds. And it's all about teaching young girls about how to use their money, like in an ethical way that's going to continue to serve them for a long, long time. But I think money education is really, really poor in this country. And so I love this as a topic, but we're almost out of time. But I do have something that I think is really important to ask. So there will inevitably be people listening to this that like, I want a piece of that. Like I want to talk about being part of that business, or my group joining your group, or something like that. What's the best way for people to get in touch? And like, are you open just to conversations? What's kind of next steps with that?
Yeah, always open to conversations. I'm obviously on LinkedIn like every other exec recruiting consultant or recruitment company owner in the UK. So I'm on LinkedIn. Also, I have presence on X as well. If you're in the Bitcoin world, you must be on X. So I have presence on there. I'm happy to receive emails, happy people to reach out on LinkedIn. And I love talking about the asset class anyway. And I think the education in money is so important. And if you've not had the education in money, you can't possibly understand this asset class anyway. This asset class is often perceived by people on the outside like an asset class that somebody's fell into, luckily, or there's not much thought behind it. When the reality is, when you're in this space, it's usually people who've got a very deep understanding of the history of money, right back from seashells in Africa all the way through the ages. It's that deep understanding that makes it very clear to them that the money that we're using today is broken, and the money shouldn't be losing value year on year. And with your daughter reading that book, it's hard to get to the stage where you just have that, oh, the house prices are not going up in value. The money is actually going down in value. And when you get to that point where you've studied money enough to realise that that's the reason everything's getting more expensive, is the money's getting weaker and weaker and weaker, that's when you can then start studying Bitcoin and understand that, okay, it needs to be limited in supply. It needs to be hard to make. It needs to be verifiable. It needs to be transportable. It needs to be divisible. And it needs to be unconfiscatable for it to be a real money. And the closest comparison in history when you're looking at is gold. It's really hard to move $1 million worth of gold to America. And it's hard to break it off and hand it to your friend.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's hard to know where it is.
Yeah. Scott, this has been fascinating. Thank you so much for your time. Yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure, mate. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, Jerry.